Hey everybody, it's Safi and Marco Dish Out on Movies, the only movie review show on YouTube to review movies in terms of food. To review, not review, I think I said. It's just Marco here once again, and I'm here to do something wildly different. I am doing another video in the series, Just One More Page. And we came up with that when Safi wanted to review these books that nobody really cares about. Like, I think one of them was like Murders and Metaphors, like, books that nobody really cares about. And, now I've decided to basically do my own book reviews, because why not? It's so exhausting to watch a new movie every day. It's a pain. It's really bad, especially when they're movies that came out from nowadays. I mean, like, Boss Baby 2, and, excuse me, Boss Baby 2, and, stuff like that. It's a pain to watch and review a new movie every day. And I wanted to take a break again and review a book. I might as well, because I am reading every single Goosebumps book for the first time, except for one, which is Horror at Camp Jelly Jam. That's the only Goosebumps book that I've ever read fully. As a kid, I couldn't get into them. I thought they were boring. They looked like a pain to read. I thought that the covers were better than the books. I thought that the episodes were good, and why not just make episodes and just watch the episodes? I really did not, and now I can kind of see why, honestly, because some of these books are really, really bad, and I'm gonna be reading all of them, and then I am going to actually do a paid analysis video, where I basically analyze the books versus the TV shows, and I talk about why the TV show worked and why what they're doing now, making those shitty baby movies, and then making this series, which is probably going to be babyish too, why nowadays the new Goosebumps does not work as well as the TV show did. And that will be paid for. You're going to have to pay for that if you want to watch it. It'll just be like a couple of bucks or so, and it's going to be on the site called Gumtree. And I just thought I should start doing that, instead of just, giving everything away. Why don't I start making money off of what I'm good at? I'm an artist, I'm a filmmaker, and, in order to make films, you got to have the money to make the films. And I really think that it'd be a good thing to do. So I'm here to review my first Goosebumps book that I read. I've already read like 12 or 13 or so. I think 12. And the first one I read was The Girl Who Cried Monster. And this book, it was okay. I struggled to get through it, honestly. It took up an entire Saturday morning and a couple of weeks ago, and it was like kind of painful because, well, let's just get started. The book, and I'm going to be spoiling the shit out of these Goosebumps books, so if you're not ready to be spoiled, if you want to go read these baby kid books, well, they're not baby books. They're pretty, they're mixed. They're all over the place. That's one of my biggest issues with the series in general, is that it doesn't feel like there's a general consistency of scary and not scary and funny. Like, there's one book that I just read, You Can't Scare Me, and that book was basically a high school comedy book. It was really not scary at all. It had no horror in it whatsoever until like a little bit at the end. But with this book, it actually does feel like a horror book. And I thought that was one of the good things, was that it felt like a Goosebumps book should feel like. It felt like it took some chances. It felt like it was creative, and it pushed the boundaries a little bit while still playing it safe and making a nice little kids horror book. And the plot is as follows. Lucy. You got this bitch Lucy. And now she is 12 years old, but man, she is a huge bitch. She's got this little brother named Randy, and she treats her little brother like absolute shit. She makes up these monsters, tells him that, like, when he goes in the bathroom to take a wee wee, he's gonna get his dick bitten off by a monster out of the toilet. She tells him, like, there's a monster. Oh, look, Randy, there's a monster over there hiding in the tree. He's gonna reach down from the tree and grab you. And then she's like, Randy, guess what? There's a monster right on top of you. The monster is literally eating your brains out right now. And Randy is this little gullible. I mean, he's so young and he's gullible. And so he's like, ah! And, he's really upset about this. And he's really, like, she puts him through absolute terror. She puts him through hell. And she's not likable. Even in the episodes, she is not likable. And I won't talk much about the episodes, but I will a little, because the episode is way better than the book, because it's shorter, because it's got some better choices that it makes overall. And I'll talk about that, of course, in the paid video. But this, and so the little brother, he's just scared, and she really, like, she's evil. And she's like, oh, Randy, you were going to eat that meatball? There's a monster in the meatball. And then Randy's like, oh, no, stop it. Ah! And then Randy, like, runs away crying. And, she's giving him, like, PTSD at, like, age 5. And it's like, and she says she's a horror fan, too, which is sad because it doesn't really show to me in this episode in this book, that she's a horror fan. Like, there's not really any indication of that at all. Like, if she was a horror fan, then she would have already read Frankenstein before this book, to be honest. That's one of the flaws. And so, this biatch, Lucy. And that's another thing. Lucy, when I see the name Lucy, I think of Dracula, honestly. And I honestly think that this book would have been a better Dracula book. It would have been better if it had just been like a vampire book. And it actually shares another similarity with Vampire's Breath, because... Sorry about that. That was very unexpected. Because in Vampire's Breath, it's another one where at the end it turns out, oh, we were monsters all along. Ha 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 ha. It's the same thing as this in terms of that twist. And so I think that this should have been the vampire one, honestly, because the whole concept of retelling the Boy Who Cried Monster, but with the girl and with all these other stupid things, it did not really work for me. Like, if I was rating this book in terms of how well it was an adaptation of that story, I'd probably give it an F. Like, that's not good. So she's going to the library. She does this stupid program in the summer called Reading Rangers. And a big flaw with this is that apparently, like, you read books and then you do a little book report for the perverted librarian, and he's like, oh, really? What'd you like about that one? And then he, like, recommends you a new book, and it's, like, a really queer book that, like, that you would never want to read at all. Like, at one point, I mean, he knows this bitch is a horror fan. It's like, why don't you recommend her a nice horror book? Nah, guess what this jackass monster recommends her? He forces her to read Anne of Green Gables. I mean, oh my God. She said she's a horror fan. She likes monsters. Give her a nice monster book. You suck as a librarian, and you're a hack. I don't know how he was a librarian for so long in this town. He should have been gone within a month. And he's been there for like 2 years. Mr. Mortman. Name Mortman. Nobody'd be called Mortman. Do you know someone named Mortman? Do you know a guy named Mr. Mortman? I'd like to know. So, this program, apparently you read books, and they never say how many books you have to read, of course. And then they say that you get a special prize at the end if you read all the books. It's like, what? Like, you don't just say that. You gotta say what the prize is. You gotta say how many books you gotta read. Because I want to know, like, that's details that matter. Like, I had a program in first grade that was actually really good and really motivated me to read more, actually. And basically, you had to read so much, and then you got a coupon for a free personal pizza from Pizza Hut. And wow, that was back when Pizza Hut was good. And that was such an amazing prize. I was really happy when I got that as a kid. That really made me proud. But in this, it's like it's the summer reading program that, like, you don't know what the prize is. What's the prize, Mr. Mortman? I mean, because this guy, Mr. Mortman, he's a total creep, and we'll talk about that later. He's really weird, and he's really like, you want to talk about suspect, Mr. Mortman. He is just the epitome of creepy. I mean, apparently he's so sweaty that his fingers are dripping sweat all over the books. He's like dripping little droplets of sweat onto the book's pages, making them all wet and slimy, and like he forces you to shake his hand. Like, this guy's creepy. He's really creepy, and he's really weird. And so he's got to be a monster. And sometimes with these Goosebumps books, one thing I wonder is like what the messaging is, because I know that you can just tell a story and just tell a story, and nothing can be deeper than that. But like, what's the message of like the main girl? She's a horror fan, and then she's a jackass to her brother. And then Mr. Mortman, he's sweaty a lot, and so that means that he's a monster. Like, is that really good writing? Is that really like a good way to analyze things? Like, oh, that person's weird, they must be a monster. Like, that's the type of stuff that I dealt with in school, and I have to wonder if it's because they read this book and they're like, oh, is Marco a monster because he sweats? Like, that's really weird. Like, a really weird conclusion to jump to. Like, instead of that, why don't you just wonder, like, are they okay? Do they have a condition? Are they, like, what's wrong with that person? So, I gotta get through this book. This review, it reminds me of the book because the book was so long and repetitive. This review isn't repetitive, but the book was. That's for damn sure. So this bitch Lucy, she sees Mr. Mortman become a monster, and she sees him eat turtles and eat crickets and all this stuff in the library. And one thing that I thought was really cool about the library was that they said that this wasn't an actual library building, but this was actually a rich guy's old house. And when the rich guy died, he left them the library. Or his house, and so they turned it into a library. And I thought that was actually really cool because it was like this nice gothic setting. And I thought, yet again, another pointer that this should have been Dracula because, Dracula, just think about that, how they go to Dracula's castle. So yet again, another reason this book should have been The Girl Who Cried Dracula or something. And so basically it follows the Boy Who Cried Monster type of plot, where she has a friend named, I think it was like Aaron, and her friend Aaron won't believe her, and then like her brother, I think, kind of believes her, which I don't know. Like, honestly, if I had an older sister like Lucy, I would stay far away from her, because she is just completely evil. And I don't know why Randy kept on, gravitating towards her. And, following her around. And, it was kind of weird, the behaviors of the characters in this book. And then her parents won't believe her, which is a huge plot hole when you find out the twist at the end. Because her parents, like, even though they're monsters, and they know that there could be another monster, they have this really, like, stupid excuse where they're like, it's either like there hasn't been monsters in this town, or it's like, we didn't believe you until your friend told us that he saw the monster as well. Like, it's really weird, the excuse that these parents give. The parents are really unlikable, and that's another pet peeve of mine with these Goosebumps books, is that the parents are so unlikable. I mean, if this book is relatable, like, R.L. Stine says that he likes to write Goosebumps books and make them relatable. If you relate to the parents in these books, then I am really, really sorry how bad your childhood was, because these parents are really, really bad. Uh, you got these parents, they're monsters, for Christ's sakes. That's bad enough. So she basically, I'm not even kidding. This book is so repetitive. It basically follows this boring format where she goes and she spies on the librarian. And then she goes and spies on him again. And then she goes and spies on him again. And then she goes and spies on him again. With little change. She just spies on him over and over again. It is so boring. It is so repetitive. And there's Safi. Safi just got home. She looks like a midget when she drives. So it's really boring in that sense, which is sad, because I thought that the book was enjoyable in some parts, but overall it was just really boring. And, there was this big change that he made that really kind of irritated me, and it was that originally Mr. Mortman was supposed to eat a kid, and then he had to change it, of course, because it's Goosebumps, and he had to make it to where he eats turtles. And I just thought that was really stupid. That kind of took the whole horror out of the book. Because, a logical person would say, well, just because this guy is a monster and he eats turtles and bugs doesn't mean he's going to eat people. It doesn't mean he's going to eat you, Lucy. Even though he's a guy who sweats. And that's another thing, too. Let's talk about the monster. The monster in this book is trash. There is this, once again, repetitive. There is this constant repetition. Talking about how he looks like a toadstool. He's got toadstool eyes, like, constantly through the whole book. Toadstool, toadstool, toadstool. You could take a shot every time R.L. Stine says toadstool eyes. And I thought that was really weak. But there were a couple of good scenes. There was really one stupid sequence where Lucy takes Aaron and I'm not kidding you. They follow Mr. Mortman home to his house to spy on him. I mean, that is just retarded. And then they see him through the window eating snails. And it's like, really? Snails? Like, that's the best you could come up with? Like, really? Like, people eat snails all the time. I ate snails for my 16th birthday or whatever, which birthday that was. I've eaten snails. People eat snails. The French love snails. I know a French girl. She probably loves them. But, so I thought that, like, instead of snails, like, if you can't have them eat kids, which is, completely why you would want to be afraid of him in the first place, honestly, like, in The Boy Who Cried Monster, I can't remember what kind of monster it was, but you knew that that monster would eat him, would eat the main boy. But in this book, it's like you don't even know that Mr. Mortman would eat Lucy until until like the third act, where he gets on her, and he really gets on her trail. So it's like, I think that he should have eaten like centipedes or something really gross like that. Like, that would have been so, oh, that would have been so scary and creepy to read. I mean, let's just say he opens up a floorboard or a wall board, and he takes a handful. Oh God, it's so gross. It is so gross just to even think about. And just see what I'm saying? Like, that would have been so much scarier and so much grosser than just, oh, he has a fish tank, or he has an aquarium tank, and he's got some snails in there, and he picks up a snail and eats it. Wow, that's really scary. Not. There was one scene that I really loved, and it was the scene where Mr. Mortman followed Lucy home, and basically she talks to him through the screen door with her brother there too, which I thought that was one thing that was stupid, because in the episode she's all alone, and that made it so much scarier, considering that this guy sweats a lot, and so he must be a monster. And so she talks to him through the screen door, and it's this really good suspense dialogue where he questions her, and he basically says, like, "Hey Lucy, do you believe in monsters?" And it's really creepy, and it's really good dialogue. And I really love that scene, honestly. That was like a scene where I was like, oh wow, this is actually really good. And then there was one really good scene that I loved at the end, where the mom, that biatch mom, forces Lucy to go to the library again. And she goes there, and there's this long line, and Mr. Mortman tells her, Lucy, why don't you just go stand over there and wait for me to call you up to the desk? And at that moment, you know that shit was going to happen, because he goes through the entire line of people and makes her wait for hours. And she's just standing there, and she's completely clueless about what's going to happen. And it's so funny and yet so good, because then the library is literally empty except for him and her. And then he locks the front door. I mean, that was really, really like, uh-oh. That was like a big, like, oh no type of moment. And and she just stands there completely not knowing what's going on. And he's like, I'm not going to be able to let you leave, Lucy. And, and then he turns into a monster, and he chases her around. And I thought what was really good was then she purposefully knocks over the library note cards. And I thought that was brilliant, because then Mr. Mortman stops and he's like, oh shit! And he starts picking up all the note cards. And I thought that was really good, because it's like he's a librarian as well as being a monster. And so I thought that was actually a really clever and good writing trick, that this monster that could easily eat Lucy, instead of being able to get to her, he's got to pick up these note cards, and it's a distraction. And then, of course, we have the ending, which I really didn't like the ending. I thought it was stupid. It just raised more questions than it did answer anything. It's just... this book is just really below average. I would give this book a C-. It really was not a great start. It was too long. It was too repetitive. Excuse me. And it really, needed some more editing, honestly. Just a lot of these stories feel like they're just too long. Like, the stories themselves just don't need to be this long. They could be shorter. They could be 50 pages. They could be 30 pages. This one should have been like 70 pages probably, because it really does not need to be as long as it is. But still, I actually liked it. I didn't like hate it. I didn't dislike it. I just kind of liked it a little bit. I give it still a C minus. So that's it. That's my first ever book review. Wow, it was long. It was way too long. Just like the book. I promise these reviews won't always be this long. Well, okay, maybe they will. So if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And then comment, tell me, what did you think of The Girl Who Cried Monster? Because everyone, I gotta call people out, man. Everyone loved the turtle scene, and I just thought it was okay. I really don't see what was so special about him crunching on the turtles. Because honestly, there's a lot of creatures who have bones that he could crunch on. You know something scary? I was eating a chicken nugget in my lunchroom in elementary school, and I was eating a chicken nugget. I did not like the chicken nuggets. I hated them, and I'm not kidding. There was a bone in this nugget, and it was as big as a quarter. It was a round bone, and oh God, it was so gross. Oh my God. Oh God. Oh my God. It's hard. Oh my God. I can't believe that was in my mouth. That was so gross. And I really hate myself for not reporting that. I didn't even say anything except to my parents and my friends. But that was so gross. And like, you could have had Mr. Mortman eat a chicken and he would have been crunching down on bones. You know what I mean? So, like, the whole thing with eating turtles, like, the turtles, they weren't even scared. Like, maybe if you made the turtles scared, if you had made them start crying, if you had made them, like, beg and make noises because they've witnessed their other friends get eaten, that would have been really, really upsetting and creepy and scary. But just having him, like, oh, and Mr. Martman reaches in the aquarium and he takes out some turtles and eats them. Like, that's not really, it's not really impressive. And in general, Mr. Mortman was a good villain, I gotta say. He was one of the highlights of the book. He was a good character. He was entertaining. I don't really understand what he is, though. He's some kind of a toad monster, because they keep on mentioning toadstool things, and just the way that he looks, it's like a toad. And I just, there's not really any logic in creating that monster. Not all monsters would eat people if there were monsters that existed. And so this could have been a monster that didn't even eat people. And you could have made it something like really scary, which is that his parents kill this innocent monster, and this monster never would have eaten Lucy. Like, that would have been pretty interesting to have, like, a message about that, like creatures eating other creatures who would never even eat them, like, sort of like a message like that. Like, that would have been interesting. But yeah, anyways, I gotta end it now. Please subscribe to our channel so that you can continue seeing Goosebumps book reviews. Goodbye, everybody. See you soon.